can't hear me? Okay, let's try again. Hi, everybody. My name is Marie Houghton. I'm the volunteer state president of AARP Vermont. We're thrilled to see so many of you here tonight, and hopefully we're all going to get to know our Burlington mayoral candidates a little bit better. The livability of our communities has long been a focus of our work at AARP Vermont. How our cities and towns prepare for and accommodate an aging population has a profound effect on the health of a community and the quality of life today and in the future for residents of all ages and abilities. We're fortunate tonight to partner with Vermont Digger, Burlington Business Association, and Local Motion. Our partners share our commitment to educating voters on where these candidates stand on important livability issues such as transportation, housing, and economic development. Our hope is to explore a number of critical issue areas important to our organizations, as well as giving you the opportunity to ask your questions. Our candidates tonight are incumbent Democratic Mayor Mayoral Weinberger, independent candidate Karina Driscoll, and infinite pleasure, also an independent. Our moderator tonight is Fran Stoddard. Fran has been involved in journalism, communications, education, and media production for over 30 years. She's been a producer and a host of a number of Vermont public television and radio programs, and often serves as a facilitator, moderator, or host for community events. Fran's in charge tonight. She will ask the questions and manage the format as follows. An opening and closing statement from each candidate will be about 90 seconds. The order will be determined by a name drawing. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for their answer with the help of our timekeeper, Dave Revel. Each candidate will have an opportunity for 5 rebuttals at 30 seconds each. We encourage you to ask questions by filling out an index card, which can be found by the registration table. Some of you have already done that, I think. Please provide your name and question, hold up the index card if you have it, and return it to one of the staff members or volunteers. They'll circulate throughout the room. We have staff and volunteers doing their best to group similar questions together while keeping the integrity of the questions. We will not announce the name of the questioner. We will select as many as we can in the time we have tonight. Tonight's event is meant to be an educational forum. We ask audience members to respect the spirit of this event, as well as our candidates and audience members, and refrain from rallying, heckling, or loud cheering. Save your applause to the end, please. We want to use our time efficiently and promise to get to as many questions as possible. At the end, which would be around 8 o'clock, you're invited to join us for dessert reception. Thank you so much for being here. Fran, it's all yours.
Thank you, Marie. And thank you, candidates, for being here, and for all of you for joining us, and for those joining us via streaming, we also welcome you. Tonight's sponsors have really spent some time developing a couple of questions that I'll begin with for the candidates that focus on livability, and also people have been entering questions online, and hopefully you will also add to that pot of questions here. Some of the topics from our sponsors have preambles that I will share with you. So we'll go on with that in a minute, but first there will be opening remarks. And the candidates drew earlier for those, and we will begin with Karina.
Thank you, Fran. My name is Karina Driscoll. I'm a business owner of 10 years, a mother of 2 kids in the Burlington schools, and I have served proudly on the Burlington School Board, in the Vermont State Legislature, as a city councilor, and also as an appointee for Mayor Weinberger through his first year in office. Today, almost 5 years later, I am running as an independent candidate for mayor because now is the time for real change. I have been endorsed by the Progressive Party, Rights and Democracy, and by Our Revolution, and as of yesterday, by the workers of the city of Burlington. I am proud to have been endorsed by AFSCME Local 1343, Council 93, which represents about 275 workers across city departments and the Burlington School District. This endorsement is a vote from within city government for change. Our campaign, which is building momentum every day, is about a vision for the city created by and for the people who live here. As we look to the Queen City of our future, it is time to build a city with an energized, resilient economy built on a commitment to progress for all of us. We can be a city that fosters the development of community again. We can be doing so much better and so much more. And with strong mayoral leadership, in cooperation with our superintendent and school board, we can lead our schools out of crisis. It is time to pivot to a people's vision for Burlington. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Karina. And Miro chose the number 2 for the opening statement.
Thank you, Fran. Burlington is a city of bold ideas, and I've been proud to be a mayor that turns those ideas into action and progress. In this election, Burlingtonians have a clear choice. We have a choice of moving forward to create a more livable, more sustainable, or more vibrant city, or we have a choice to go back to the policies that brought us to the brink of bankruptcy and stagnation. My vision for Burlington is a place where we are maintaining our fiscal responsibility while investing in public infrastructure, fighting climate change by becoming a net zero energy city, and protecting the promise of Burlington as Vermont's city of opportunity where people of all incomes, ages, and backgrounds can find a home, make a career, and start a family. After years of working with our great partners, AARP, Local Motion, and BBA, we are on the path of turning bold ideas into action. For our seniors, we are on the way towards achieving AARP's goal of Burlington being the best small city in America to grow old in. We are well on our way towards becoming a gold-level, bike-friendly, and walk-friendly city. And we are now on our way, in construction in fact, transforming our failed suburban mall into a mixed-use, vibrant neighborhood that creates jobs, homes, and reconnects our downtown grid. To complete all of that, we must stick with the principles that have and the commitment that have helped us achieve the successes of the past 6 years and not go back to a time where we couldn't get bold ideas or much of anything done. Join me in keeping Burlington moving forward. I ask for your vote on March 6th.
Thank you, Moreau. And Infinite, your opening statements.
Hi, my name is Infinite, and I've been a Burlington resident for about 30 years now. And that was about 18 when I first got here, and found myself, in and out of trouble. And someone pulled me up and said, "Infinite, get yourself together. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps," is what they said to me. And so I tried. I went to school and got an education and worked a 9 to 5, overcame adversity, and led by example. Now I'm finding out that the biggest reason why people may not make it is because our systems don't allow them to. And when I go around knocking on doors and I talk to seniors and young people, what they're saying is that our city is failing them. And so this is part of the reason why I'm running for mayor, because I am convinced that when we focus on building the capacity of our most vulnerable residents, this city will become a more safe city, more equitable city, and a more livable city.
Thank you, Infinite. We're going to start with transportation. AARP's study on livability in Burlington shows that most respondents value a city that offers a range of transportation choices, including walkability. Half of Burlington's residents surveyed believe that there are street safety issues for bicyclists, while a plurality believes safety is an issue for people with disabilities, for older adults, children, and pedestrians, and believe conditions can be improved for people who walk or bike. As a city, Burlington has struggled to evolve its transportation network to support a range of transportation choice. While older adults need transport options to continue living in their neighborhoods, many younger adults are choosing not to drive. Smartly planned streets and transportation options are great for people of all ages. Plan BTV Walk Bike, Burlington's Walk and Bike Master Plan, lays out an ambitious timetable for transforming Burlington streets into a modern, multimodal transportation system. So now the question, and we are going to start with Moreau. What is your strategy to make transit more practical for a wide range of Burlingtonians and to assure it will be accessible to everyone?
So, mass transit is something that we do well as a small city in Burlington. We have a great partner in Green Mountain Transit, and we have worked very hard over the last 6 years to strengthen that partner by rebuilding the downtown transit station and fulfilling a many-decade-long pledge, and by working with, really pushing Green Mountain Transit to add new technologies like an app on your phone so you can see when your bus is going to arrive. We know, however, that we have to really to succeed as a city, we need to worry about other modes as well. That is why I am a very strong supporter of the Walk Bike Master Plan, and why we went to the voters and included that in part of the infrastructure effort, and have just come through the first year of implementing it. When we come through that implementation over the next 5 years, our sidewalks will be in much better shape than they are today. We are replacing our sidewalks at 3 times our historic rate. Our roads will be in better shape than they are today, and our other recreational facilities like the bike path are finally headed in the right direction, with us having completed 5 of the 8-mile rebuilding.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We understand that 60 seconds is not a long period of time, so we respect that you're all trying to fit it in. Infinite, your strategy to make transit more practical and accessible.
So when we're talking about public transportation in particular, the SSTA, the GMT, we have a system that is quasi-public, that is not quite accountable to the people of Burlington. So when someone who's waiting for a CCTA bus and it's late, or they don't show up, or I'm sorry, SSTA, they don't know who to call. They may call the mayor's office and get some response, or may not. If they want to show up at the board meeting, they have to be there at 7:30 in the morning. So we need to figure out how to hold our public transportation service accountable, and we need to look at our streets and take inventory on a block by neighborhood basis, as long as it takes. And when we make our sidewalks accessible to folks who are differently able, they'll be accessible to everyone. That's what equity is.
Thank you. And Karina, your strategy.
So we have an old city with old infrastructure, and it's a challenge, but we must work to meet it. We need to make sure that we can accommodate all types of transportation, whether people are biking or walking or taking public transportation, or needing the streets to be accessible because they're in wheelchairs or are infirm. It's important that we focus on our sidewalks and continue to build out our bike lanes. We can invest in and partner with car share so that they may grow in the way that they have been wanting to. We need to look at the fact that our seniors can't always access same-day doctor's appointments because SSTA doesn't meet that need. We can partner with Green Cab, much like the schools have, to move kids around to get to great programming. But most importantly, we need to make these changes as a community and in cooperation with our neighborhoods and the community that will be impacted by these changes. We can have complete streets with our commitment together. Leadership is hard, but we need to get out in front of it and bring people along. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Yes. So your first one.
I'm using my first rebuttal.
Go for
yes.
it.
Thank you, Fran. I want to get in again here because I actually am a real optimist about the future of transportation in Burlington. And I think transportation planning and action in the future is different than we've thought of it traditionally. It's not just building new roads. It's not just additional buses. We have an ability to use technology in a new way now. 6 years ago, the VPIRG put out a report saying Burlington only was using a couple of the innovative transportation technologies that we should. A few years later, we now are using more than half of those technologies, and we are seeing people get around the city with ride sharing and ride sourcing in a way that we never saw before. We can do that, apply that kind of innovation to other areas of our transportation system, like the SSTA area as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to use another rebuttal card right at this? Yeah, you hold off. We have another transportation question, so something might work here for you. As mayor, and we're going to be starting with Infinite on this one. As mayor, what specific actions will you take to make our streets safe, comfortable, and appealing for people of all ages and abilities? Yes, Infinite.
When you say safe, That is a very broad term. So do you mean able to walk on?
I think able to walk and feel safe. I think these were not written by me,
Okay.
but I think, feeling safe about where you're walking, not only is there a pothole, but safe in general
Yep,
on
okay.
a larger scale.
Okay.
Why don't we start at this point?
Okay. So
That was clarified.
Thank you for that clarification. So as I brought up before, I think when we're talking about the infrastructure, I think we need to really approach our infrastructure on a block-by-block level so that the folks who are actually living on that block are reporting to the city how those sidewalks are suited for them, whether they're suited for them, whether they need to be approached. When we talk about safety, actually, as mayor, as the chief peace officer of the city of Burlington, I would plan to bring peace teams to the city of Burlington in the way that we have, teams of folks downtown, watching our downtown. I plan to bring peace teams into our city to walk around our community and get to know our community and build relationships with folks every day, all year round, in the way that some police officers do without guns.
Thank you. And Karina, your thoughts about making streets safe, comfortable, and appealing for all people?
Yes, I think one of the most important things to acknowledge is that we have a growing senior population in Burlington, and we are not ready for that. And I think when it comes to our sidewalks and our streets and being ready, we do need to prioritize the improvement of our sidewalks near our senior housing and between our senior housing and our bus stations and our post offices and our services. That's incredibly important to empowering people to feel safe through their senior years and maintain their independence. In addition, we can be empowering people through our NPAs to determine what the priorities are. We need better communication from the city as to what the progress is and what can be expected and where are you in the queue when it comes to your sidewalk. And I think in order to be transparent, it's time for the city to have an ombudsman who everyone in the city can access to gain access to our city departments. It's difficult to navigate the system if you don't work for the city and you don't understand how it works. And we need to connect people with an ombudsman who can connect people with the resources of the city and explain the process that's available to them.
Thank you, Karina. And Murrow.
Thanks. Actually, there are three areas that are key to addressing this idea of making our streets better and safer and for everyone. One is certainly rebuilding our sidewalks. Way too many of our sidewalks have been neglected for a long time. Until this administration, we only replaced about 1% of our sidewalks, or less than 1% of our sidewalks every year. Sidewalks don't last 100 and 120 years. You need to replace them more frequently than that. We are now on a sustainable path that has more than tripled that rate. If you want to know where those sidewalks are, we have a projects portal on the city's DPW page where you can see for the next 5 years where we're going to build those new sidewalks. Two, we need to improve our crosswalks. We've been doing that on Pine Street. We'll do that even more when we finally get the Champlain Parkway built in the next year. On North Avenue, we are putting in new crosswalks in 5 different areas, including right next to the Heinenberg Center. And that work will start this summer. And then finally, a third area that we need to push ourselves on is we know that the key to people feeling safe on bikes for most riders is protected bike lanes. We don't have such a system today. We have a plan that will get us there. I intend to implement that plan while being very careful about the trade-offs we make.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to housing now. A safe, adequate, physically accessible and affordable home is a basic need of all Vermonters, and it is a cornerstone of a vibrant economy and healthy community. Burlington has one of the country's highest rates of housing cost relative to income at 44%. The cost and availability of housing is a top concern for many residents. For older adults who want to age in place and are concerned about accessibility and affording their home, to young professionals unable to find affordable rental units in a walkable downtown location. Burlington recently completed an analysis of its inclusionary zoning ordinance with the goal of assessing in what ways it is working well and in what ways it is falling short of its goal of assuring that affordable housing is available for Burlingtonians of all incomes. The first question here that will be directed first to Karina is, do you think the current inclusionary zoning ordinance is the right tool for the job? If yes, why? And if not, how would you propose to improve Burlington's approach to ensuring that affordable housing options are available to everyone, especially older adults living in on fixed income, people with disabilities, and working families?
Thank you. I do feel like we need to protect our inclusionary zoning ordinance. I do believe that it can be effective if enforced, and I am concerned when developments are allowed to place their funds for development elsewhere, because that falls down on our commitment to mixed-use development and mixed neighborhoods of all incomes living together, which I think is important to maintaining the quality of life in Burlington for all of us. I also think we need to move from our commitment of building, really prioritizing city resources to building market rate housing, and move to our commitment to build affordable and maintain affordable when affordable housing is at risk. And I think there are progressive policies that we can do that, and we are not employing some of those policies, like leveraging city lots in the city to encourage and incentivize the development of affordable or mixed-use housing, instead of building student housing downtown or hotels. So thank you.
Perfect. And Mayoral.
Great. Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest differences between the candidates in this campaign. I believe that we truly have an affordable housing crisis, and we have treated this like a crisis from day one. And in a crisis, you bring all the tools you can to bear. Traditionally, we have only worried about one sector of the housing model, which is the permanently affordable area for low-income families and seniors. We have continued to put as much resources, in some ways more than ever, into that, and we are succeeding there. We have created or preserved more than 300 permanently affordable homes for low-income families and seniors. But what we have also said is, if we really want to do something about that 44% ratio, which came from a study we commissioned, we said we got to worry about housing for people of all backgrounds, incomes, and ages as well. And that's why we have supported projects like the rebuilding of the mall into a vibrant mixed-income, mixed-use neighborhood. That's why we've supported the Cambrian Rise. We are making unprecedented progress on housing. We are building total housing units at 4 times our historic rate. This is the way we get out of the affordable housing crisis. And I think it's very concerning to hear that other candidates would take us back to an overly narrow, problematic formulation that created the affordable housing crisis that we're in large part.
Okay, and while we are having Channel 5 put up a microphone there quickly, and we have a rebuttal from Karina.
Should we allow Infinite to answer first, or?
That's a good question. Why don't we do that, and then we'll go to rebuttal. Thank you, Infinite.
I think, first of all, we need to, as a community, come to an agreement on what affordable means. Because right now, affordable housing is based on our area median income, which includes South Burlington, which inflates households' ability to pay rent. What we actually need is some low-income housing, which we haven't built, which the federal government hasn't built since the 1980s, and municipal governments and states have had to step up and do that. I think it's time that we revisit and start a discussion around rent control and what that might look like. Because at this point, landlords can charge anything they want, and it's an unregulated market. And so they will seek the highest rents that they can get. I think it's time that we begin to have a discussion about rent control. And when people are living in subsidized and federal, a federal program on vouchers, the leases prevent family members from living with them and helping them out. So we also need to look at some of these restrictions that some of these vouchers have.
Thank you. Karina.
Thank you. When the mayor says we need to build housing for all, our nonprofit housing community has continued to chug along and add to our affordable housing stock. And that is sometimes our affordable housing community has had to rally around affordable housing that was at a loss and rally around the mayor to make sure that the right thing happened and that we didn't lose South Meadow to become market rate housing, and that we didn't lose the land on Farrington Trailer Park, because the first instinct of City Hall has not been to protect affordable. Our city used to work in partnership with our nonprofits in order to build nonprofit housing and affordable housing for our community.
Thank you. And another rebuttal. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just not true that this administration is not committed to permanently affordable housing. This is what I did as a professional for 15 years before becoming mayor. It is in my bones to care about permanently affordable housing. We also care about other types of housing, though, because if we don't, we're going to continue to get less and less affordable. That's not just my policy. That's the policy of the Building Homes Together program in Chittenden County, which includes all the housing nonprofits. Again, it is a real problem to hear that Karina wants us to take us back to policies that are overly narrow and help create the affordable housing crisis we're living in right now. We should not allow the city to do that. Let's keep moving forward.
Thank you. Slightly different angle on housing again. What regulatory and incentive-based approaches would you consider to ensure not only that new construction meets the needs of a rapidly aging population, but also that older buildings are made accessible? And we will start with Miro on this.
I'm sorry, Frank, can you repeat that? I don't understand the question.
Sure. So this is about what regulatory and incentive-based approaches would you consider to ensure that new construction meets, not only new construction, meets the needs of our aging population, but that older buildings are also made accessible? So this is really this older population around new construction and also maybe refitting our older buildings.
Yeah, great. Okay, I got it now.
Okay.
This is an interesting question. We have historically held our reconstruction, when owners try to improve their older buildings, we have very high standards that we hold them to, and sometimes that becomes a real disincentive to upgrading and improving older buildings. And we've tried to address this head on as part of our permit reform effort that we spent more than a year working with the council on, and that was ultimately adopted by the council unanimously. And one of the elements of that is we are moving towards essentially a rehabilitation code, a different standard for existing buildings and how they are improved versus new construction. It's a more practical code. It's one that will lead to more investment in our community and will ultimately make us better and stronger as a community by encouraging that and making more possible.
Thank you. Infinite.
Yeah, I keep hearing about accessory units and how beneficial that might be. I'm not, and right now, I think we may need to change our zoning for that. But back to rent control, I think we can offer, state willing tax incentives or tax breaks to small property owners who are willing to find some medium in between having no cap on what they can charge for rent and having some moderate level of rent, especially for folks who are living on a fixed income.
Thank you. Karina.
So we need to re-energize the Burlington Access Group, which is committed to accessibility downtown. This is a group that has really waned in its purpose in the last 5 years. I would say to the, in this community, the ADA is real. The laws that protect accessibility are real. Yet we have a group, an accessibility group, that has been very patient with our business community and hasn't wanted to litigate. So I think it's our obligation to re-energize that ADA group, the Access Group, to begin to make progress and support our business community and work together to make our old buildings accessible. In addition, we need to expand on the grant program that's available for people making accessibility modifications to their homes. We need to expand on that so that people who aren't income eligible can also get interest-free loans to make those modifications, because with 800 seniors on the waiting list at Cathedral Square, more and more people will be aging in place and will be living with their family members, and we need to help and assist our families make those changes to their homes so that we can maintain independence for seniors at home for as long as they would like to be there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And to close up housing in kind of a quick way, if we can, because Burlington's high rents and very low vacancy rates clearly indicate that our community needs more housing, how many homes do you think should be built in Burlington in the next decade? And we'll see if we can just do this quickly, or maybe not. Infinite.
So homes as in single-family homes, as in multifamily units?
Well, I think that a home is a home for someone, and it might be an apartment, it might be part of a multi-unit,
Okay.
but,
So what we should definitely
question.
do is take into consideration that we are resettling people from all over the world who are coming here having really large families, and we're not constructing 4-bedroom apartments or 3-bedroom apartments, 2, maybe some are 3. So we need to take into account the population who we continue to resettle, who are having these large families, and find ways to accommodate those families. How many homes is that?
In the next decade?
A lot.
Good enough. Karina.
You know, it's an interesting question because we have been going through a period of rapid development. We are adding a lot of housing to our stock, and we are adding a lot of commercial space. Most of it is more expensive than what we already have available in our community. In a community where over half of our renters are rent burdened, we're adding more expensive housing with the expectation that that is going to bring the cost of rents down. Those units are staying vacant for a longer period of time than I think developers are expected, and that is driving the vacancy rate up. But as they're more expensive than the units that are already available, they are not effectively bringing rents down. I think the mayor has claimed rent stability, but I don't think we have numbers on that. I would also say that as far as how many to add at this time, I don't think that's clear. I think it's important right now that we take a breath and see what impact we're going to have on the market by what we're adding. But what we do add, we can add significantly, 50 to 100 units a year by allowing people to add accessory units to their apartments. And I have other thoughts, but maybe I'll rebut.
Okay. Moreau.
Thanks, Fran. Picking a exact target in the future is always difficult. I think that this target that has been created by our housing nonprofits for the county of 3,500 homes over the next 5 years throughout the county, 700 of them permanently affordable, is a good target. And we're making real progress towards that. We're making progress towards Burlington building its share of that, which is important. We went through a decade leading up to this administration where we only built 200 homes over that whole decade throughout the downtown. We have more than quadrupled that rate in what is either built or under construction right now. And that is having an impact on the numbers. We are seeing vacancy rates go up, and we know that cities that are farther ahead of us in this kind of effort, progressive cities, are seeing rents actually fall. So this is a strategy that works. It's worked around the country. Progressive mayors are pursuing around the country. President Obama encouraged us to go in this direction. We should not go back to the policies of the past that helped create this affordability problem.
Thank you. Do you want to use another
Yes,
rebuttal?
please.
Yes. Go ahead, Karina.
To be clear, I have no plans to take us backwards. I just want to throw that out there because I think we might hear it a few more times tonight. I think what I also want to say is when I had the opportunity to vote on whether or not we welcome private investment, my answer was yes. I have been pro-growth in this city, as many of us have, and when I speak of taking a pause, I really am saying it's time to reevaluate. Adding 100 units a year on average over the last I think 3 decades, is good progress, and adding over 1,000 in a very quick period of time is also good progress, and we need to be building tiny and doing more to meet people on the lower income scale. Thank you.
Terrific. And Infinite also would like to rebut.
Yeah, not really a rebuttal, just another observation that we are not talking about the elephant in the room that is the University of Vermont and Champlain College that has continued to grow and account for that growth along with the folks who we continue to resettle from all over the world, and then the other sort of migration patterns in the city. So it is quite difficult to for me to project and predict how many homes that we should be building in Burlington.
And the questions are coming in. And one more rebuttal, yes. This is the quick question, right?
Thanks, Fran. I want to agree with one thing that Infant said and disagree on another point. I think he's right that we need a different type of housing to properly serve our new American communities, and that's why when there was an opportunity to preserve South Meadow, I pushed Champlain Housing Trust to make sure that we did have 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms in that community so that we could accommodate these larger new American families. We have also worked very hard to get the university and the college to take more responsibility for their housing. We set a goal of them housing 1,700 of the 3,400 off-campus students over the next 5 years, and we're 2-3 years into that goal, and about 1,000 units, beds for students have been built or are in construction. We're making progress on that front.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to land use and development. Burlington, especially its downtown, is an older city. As a result, locations for new development and redevelopment are limited. How Burlington chooses to make use of available land is important for its future vitality. In your opinion, how will the recent passage of the Plan BTV Downtown Code change how Burlington will develop and make use of land in our downtown, or ideas that you have around that? Karina.
So when I think about land use downtown, and I think about our limited number of city lots, and when I talk about our campaign to make sure we are leveraging our city's assets for the people who live here, this is squarely in that camp. You know, we sold a city lot behind the Bove's restaurant for a hotel and housing, and it does meet the inclusionary zoning requirement that we currently have been able to maintain. But I think we should have leveraged that city lot. Instead of accepting $500,000 cash, we should have offered a ground lease on that to incentivize building mixed-use housing. I also think about the city parking lot that was sold to accommodate the construction of Eagles Landing, the Champlain College's housing in our downtown. I think we have to be very careful with the number of city lots that we have to make sure that we're using it to build affordable. And I also think about zoning on Pine Street and making sure that we are protecting the light industrial space that is currently affordable. You know, we are just barely heading off gentrification in the South End, and if we were to have been successful rezoning that to include housing, I think we would have really been very sorry.
Moreau.
The question was about the Plan BTV code that was passed in the downtown, right?
Yes,
so
and how that's going to change.
That was a landmark piece of new zoning that I'm very proud that we passed with the strong, nearly unanimous endorsement of the City Council. It's important for a lot of reasons. Here's the essence of it. Remarkably, 1/3 of our downtown is either a surface parking lot or it is an underutilized structure like the Rite Aid across from Penny Clues or like the mall used to be. This new zoning it does three big things. It encourages the infill of those with development that is of higher and better use to create new jobs and homes in the downtown. It's very clear about what is acceptable from a design perspective and what's not. So in that way, the second big thing is that it encourages great design, which is something that many of our past developments have failed to achieve. And then thirdly, it gives predictability for everyone in the process. Perhaps most importantly, for the people that currently live next to potential development sites that under our current system have no idea what can be built next to them. Because in the old system, it was very subjective. It's no longer subjective. We now have a predictable system for everyone in the process, and it's a great piece of progress.
Okay. Infinite.
And just a clarifying question, are we talking about form-based code?
Basically, yes.
Okay, because my reading of the form-based code is that it will have a negative impact on residents' ability to participate in that process and scrutinize the design and scrutinize the use of new development. That is my reading of the way that form-based code is going to work in the city. So I think the Plan BTV may have an impact that may not be highly participatory and inclusive of folks who are concerned about what's being developed in their community.
Thank you. To follow up, Karina spoke a little bit to the south end, but can you name specific locations where you see significant potential for infill development? And are there policy changes that you feel are necessary to support that development? And we'll start with Moreau.
Well, I named a couple in the last answer. They are, I do think of that. I think downtown is where we have the greatest consensus for investment, and that's where most of my thoughts about the future are. So that again, that site across from the Rite Aid, believe it or not, we have, I think, 3 surface parking lots over the course of Main Street. Those are areas where I think most people agree we can do better, create jobs and housing in the downtown. I do think there's an opportunity with that enormous surface parking lot in the south end, up against the railroad tracks, bounded by Pine Street and Sears Lane and Lakeside Avenue. I think that is an important opportunity where we should do much better in the future. And it's an exciting part of Burlington's future is how we have seen infill and energy coming into the South End. We can make some changes to policy in the South End that will promote that and guide it a little bit more than we have in the past. A lot of what's happened up until now in the South End has been ad hoc. We need to develop more of a plan for that, and that's what we've started with the Plan BTV South End.
Okay. Infinite, specific locations that you see potential for infill.
Specific locations.
Or policy changes that you feel are necessary to support.
So I'm a renter, right? And so I've never seen a tax bill up close. My inclination as a student of government is that one policy change might be, just as in other small cities, is to examine the land tax for properties as opposed to the property tax, to take some of the burden off of improvement of these lots, right? So the land tax would I think free up landowners to make improvements and not have lots sitting vacant for years.
Okay. Karina.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of opportunities in the South End. When we lost Resource on Pine Street, they still occupy a small space, a small part of the Burlington Public Works, the Public Works garages on Pine Street, which, if you are familiar with them, you'll know that they are an environmental hazard and they are falling down, and it's time for us to convert those garages into an entrepreneurship and job training center for the city that works in partnership with our nonprofits to make sure that we're training people in the city for the jobs in the growing tech sector, as well as the jobs in the booming construction industry. Other lots in the South End include the lot behind Champlain School that is owned by the school district. If we're going to build a new high school in the new North End, which we're building consensus through the city that is going to be necessary, it's time for us to shed some of those school-owned lots, for property tax reduction reasons, and also to see if we can build mixed-use development and housing there. So there's a very large lot that's hidden between the Chinese food restaurant on Shelburne Road and the high school. I think there's great opportunity there. I think there's also great opportunity for the growth of the tech center in the South End, where the Champlain Connector is coming.
Okay. 2 more questions from our sponsors this evening. One is looking at health from the point of view of land use and development. Burlington has one of the highest percentages of open space when compared to cities of similar size and population. Open space, of course, is important to health and to livability. What is your plan to create vibrant, inclusive parks, public spaces, and accessible playgrounds in Burlington that promote healthy lifestyles for people of all ages and abilities? And we're beginning this one with Infinite.
Yeah, so there are a lot of open spaces, and then what I've found is that when we dig into the ground, it turns out that it's a contaminated site in some cases. So with all the open spaces we have, not all of it is habitable. So I think we need to take our time with our hopes for using these spaces that we consider to be open, and really understand what the environmental impact studies are telling us about whether it's safe or not. So that's an opportunity, I think, to engage our neighbors in a participatory process on how, if habitable, how neighbors would like to see these open spaces used.
Okay, thank you. Karina.
So when speaking about open space, it is incredibly important. Recently on the old diocese, old Burlington College land, 12 acres has been preserved. And I think that is going to be an incredibly important access to the lake for people who live in the Old North End and are traveling through on bikes. I believe that we need to create a community grants program, a small community grants program in our city that can help, no matter what your community of is, whether you're talking about people who live in your neighborhood or people who come from the same part of the world, we can make these grants available for people to define for themselves what they want to do in their community, to build community gardens, identify those pocket spaces where people can gather, rooftop gardens and kitchen gardens. We can be working to protect open space and build community to avoid loneliness, which, as we know, is a factor in depression, which of course is a matter of health.
Thank you, Karina. Murrow.
Thanks. One of the things that I am proudest of is that I believe people will look back on the last 6 years as having been a really golden era of park expansion and park building. Some of the highlights of that have included purchasing that 12-acre parcel, piece of the former Burlington College land, and making it into this important connector between North Avenue and the bike path. It has included the new park at the north end of the urban reserve and the realignment of the bike path up against the water, making that a far better public amenity. It has included the building of a world-class skate park. Going forward from here, I think it gets even better. And this summer, we're going to build a new waterfront park on the west side of the water plant that will replace that parking lot there. We are going to, when we go south with the bike path, we will rebuild the playground in Oak Ledge Park, and we will make that an accessible playground that we're sorely lacking today. And we will make City Hall Park finally the park that it should be as the center of our community. If you care about parks, if you want to see this era of golden investment, of outstanding, an era of renewal and expansion in our parks, this is a major reason to keep moving forward.
Thank you. And finally, we get into, yes, I'm sorry.
I didn't realize-
I missed it.
I didn't
Go.
realize all three of us had answered, so thank you. When it comes to protecting our public waterfront, and it's incredibly important, I want to understand why we turned away a $1.5 million, or while it's still sitting on the burner, a $1.5 million federal grant for a publicly run marina on our waterfront. Why we're pitting private investment against our public departments when it comes to trying to address how to move forward with our parks. I don't believe in privatizing our waterfront, and I do believe there is opportunity to still accept that grant, and I think we can do that. In addition, I think we really need to be focusing on having many accessible playgrounds throughout our community. This is not an area that we have made enough progress on.
Okay. Miro first had his rebuttal card up, and then we'll go to Infinite.
What Karina is criticizing there is a plan that went through an enormous public process. I see Bill Truex here. He sat on this Public Investment Action Plan board that helped decide what those investments would be. It crowdsourced the ideas from around the community, and it was endorsed unanimously by the City Council, and then more than 70%, I think more than almost 75% of the voters endorsed this direction. So to now, years later, criticize this is really to be, I think it's just out of touch with what the public and the City Council has said we want, and that's why we're doing what we're doing.
And Infinite.
I just wanted to use this opportunity to bring up the Moran plant because I'm not sure if it's going to come up in the questions, and say that as an open space, one of the best ideas I've heard from someone who I spoke to during the campaign is an outdoor ice skating rink, and which would be an open space and activity in the winter time that I think everyone would enjoy.
Thank you. So, on to economic development. Here we go. Burlington often debates on how and why it should grow its economy and add to its vitality. Data from the Kauffman Foundation indicates the highest rate of entrepreneurship in America has shifted to the 55 to 64 age group, with people over 55 almost twice as likely to found successful companies than those between ages 20 and 34. At the same time, too many creative and ambitious young people leave Burlington to start or continue their careers and their businesses elsewhere. Between 2000 and 2012, the Burlington region added just over 1,300 jobs, but lost over 2,300 jobs of residents between the ages of 25 and 34. Data also shows that entrepreneurs of all ages are looking to Boston and other major metro areas for support and funding they need to grow their businesses. So the question we're looking at, and we'll start with Karina, is, in your opinion, how important are light manufacturing, the tech sector, and maker movements to Burlington's future, and how would you work to grow those sectors?
Burlington has a long and proud history in entrepreneurship, and we didn't get here by accident. You know, we have had a community and economic development office in the city since the 80s, and there was a time when our community and economic development office spent a tremendous amount of energy and resources incenting the development of small business and micro enterprise for a sustainable economy. We end up with a sustainable economy that is more resilient when we have small business that is thriving here in Burlington. You know, my experience is with Women's Small Business Program and Vermont Women's Business Center as an employee. I started my successful business when I was 33, and it's still going 10 years later. We need to be working very closely with our incubator spaces to create these ecosystems where people can come together and gain access to all of the supports they need to be successful. You know, the growing tech sector is also very important, and CEDO needs to play a more proactive role in encouraging employers to relocate here, to create jobs for people who live here, and we need to play a very proactive role, creating training opportunities to connect our residents with those jobs.
Thank you.
Thanks. You know, this, of course, has been an administration that has worked very closely with the business community and entrepreneurs in a whole host of ways. One example of that, the redevelopment, and it was interesting to hear those stats again about a whole decade, we only created, I think you said 1,300 net jobs. There are going to be 1,200 new jobs created from the one project alone, the redevelopment of the downtown, failing downtown mall into a mixed income, mixed use neighborhood. We have worked very closely with entrepreneurs. A recent example of that is we just announced this Mayor's Prize that is putting, over the next couple of years, we'll put $500,000 out into the community to promote entrepreneurship support organizations, a couple of them being specifically focused on women entrepreneurs, since we know that's an area of real opportunity, since women create new businesses at a much lower rate than men. And we have, you know, another thing that has been a really exciting part of the last 6 years is we said 6 years ago it'd be great to have a makerspace, and these incredible leaders came forth from the community and created the Generator, first in Memorial Auditorium, and then down in the South End, and we have worked closely to support them, and it's a great organization for the future.
Thank you. Infinite.
Karina is exactly right. Our Community and Economic Development Office needs to be reprioritized to meet the needs of not just small business owners, but self-employment and cooperatives. And as we have done with the City Market, as we've done with Gardner Supply, as we've done with Ace Hardware, as we've done with Seventh Generation, so that our economy is not vulnerable to these large shifts in the market. And the jobs that the mayor is talking about are service industry jobs, probably not unionized, probably not livable wages, which is another component of growing an economy, is paying people a livable wage.
Well, that's actually the next question, and this is really from the audience coming in about economic growth, is how you will make Burlington more competitive with faster and bigger growing cities. What is your plan to help retain and grow new businesses that actually will create opportunities for young people and for good jobs? And we are back to Moreau to begin this question.
How will we make Burlington more competitive against other cities?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I don't want to rehash the whole housing debate, but I will say, importantly, that what I hear from business owners is the biggest constraint on adding jobs and growing as a business is how broken our housing market has been historically. And, you know, that is yet another reason why the new strategies that we've brought to the table, the much more holistic strategies, are the right ones to continue. We have a very, you know, I do think CEDO is being really unfairly maligned in a lot of the statements in this campaign. You know, CEDO worked very closely with Dealer.com to keep them here by meeting their needs in the South End, down to the details. Like, we heard from them. We have problems with parking. We have problems with our employees being able to cross this very busy Pine Street. We mobilized them within months. We had new crosswalks to get people across Pine Street. We helped them find parking lots in the South End. We have city office today is stronger than it's been in a long, long time, and it's not right what you're hearing today. We will continue to fight on those fronts and more.
Okay, great. Thank you. Infinite.
Competing with other cities by making this the golden era of investing in the people who live here. And by doing that, by providing opportunities for really for people to not just make a livable wage, but I'm getting a little choked up here because I'm one of the people who moved to the city without any opportunities and made some mistakes because of that. And I really think that when you really want to compete with other cities, is how you treat the folks who don't have connections and who don't have people looking out for them and have and don't have a network to hook them up with jobs is, I think, how we are able to care for our own and compete with other cities.
Thank you. Karina.
So one of the key messages of this campaign has been about building the city for the people who live here. And we are welcoming lots of investment into our downtown, and we are building downtown. And as I said before, when I had the chance to weigh in, I did vote yes. And I spoke up for yes. But the first round of construction on the mall transformation project was the demolition, and that was subbed out to an out-of-state company. We are not creating that opportunity into jobs for people who live here. That takes hard work, and that takes commitment on the part of CEDO office to get after it and to really work in partnership with Resource and Vermont Works for Women and the developer, which is not happening, to create those training opportunities so that people can actually benefit from that development. To be able to be competitive and to support our growing and emerging business community, we need to make sure childcare is affordable and accessible throughout the city. For the last 6 years, we have had very, very long waiting lists for childcare in this community, and we need to address that. We needed to start addressing it a long time ago. We need to be supporting our families with affordable after-school and summer care, and we need to address affordability in general to be competitive.
Thank you. We have a rebuttal. Yes.
Yeah, I do need to respond to that because what was just said is just not accurate. The people who are building the mall redevelopment are, from the beginning, from the design and planning till now construction, the great majority of them are Vermonters. The construction is being led by PC Construction, a 60-year-old Vermont firm that is employee-owned. There are 27 local construction firms who have already been engaged. There were 17 local design firms. Let's just be really clear about it. This is creating huge opportunities for Vermonters now and over the long term, and any suggestion otherwise is just not right.
And Infinite.
I also wanted to add that we also stand to benefit from increasing civic engagement of the people in our neighborhoods, beginning with our neighborhood planning assemblies, which no longer really have the capacity to plan because they've been under-resourced and have been reduced to this vetting organization that are just looking at renderings and proposals that the cities are making, to weigh in on it. And so I think our neighborhood planning assemblies are a key component to weighing in on building our economy.
Well, you have an opportunity. We have a rebuttal. Next question is going to be on those planning assemblies.
Okay, great. I would just add that, one of the things I do as a candidate is reach out to people in the city who hold power. And one of those people that I met with was Don Sinex, the developer. And he does not plan to file an annual report this year because he said, we started late, so it's no big deal. He's thinking that they're going to create maybe 75% of the jobs will be livable wage, actually, even though he signed 100%. Infinite speaks often about the need for a community benefits agreement, and I agree with that. You know, we have a 46, I think, page document that mentions that he could work with Vermont Works for Women and he could work with Resource, but he does not have to. If we are going to get out of this development what the people here need, we need a CEDO office and a mayor's office that's really going after that.
Okay, thank you. This is a question that came in from this audience here tonight, and we'll start with Infinite on this. What can City Hall do to empower citizen engagement through neighborhood planning assemblies?
Yeah, so served on my neighborhood planning assembly for about half a decade now, and what we need is real decision-making power. We need to be able to propose a resolution to the city council and have the power to implore the city council and the mayor and the city of Burlington to follow through with the recommendations of our neighborhood planning assemblies. We need real power at the neighborhood level in order for people to show up, because that's when people show up. People show up when they know they have decision-making power.
Thank you. Karina.
Yeah, so our neighborhood planning assemblies were founded in the 80s as a way to decentralize power and empower people throughout our communities. And we have volunteers who are committed and show up and participate in those neighborhood planning assemblies despite diminishing power. You know, I really think we need to work with our neighborhood planning assemblies and allocate power to them again so that they can participate in the budgeting prioritization of our city and potentially run this new community grants program that I would like to offer. You know, it's the mayor's responsibility to understand what people throughout the community want. Outreach is hard, but you have to do it. You've got to get out in your community and understand and have what the public say be what informs you as you move forward, rather than checking in with your NPAs once the plans are already formed. And this is an ethic, and it's something that we really need to change. Running the city is not a series of business transactions, it is leadership, and it's about getting out into the community and understanding the people and following their lead. And that's the change I hope to bring as mayor.
Thank you. Karina. Moreau.
Well, with respect to the MPAs, I want to be very clear that I greatly value the MPAs, and we have maintained all of the policies of supporting and working with the MPAs that we inherited from past progressive administrations. There's been zero diminishment under the last 6 years. We have, again, this is another area we've had an and strategy. We also value other types of public input more than in the past. We created a position within CEDO that wasn't focused just on engaging the MPAs, but that also was a public engagement specialist and went out and met with the new American communities in a new way, that stayed in contact with them and made sure that higher levels of city government were in continuous contact with a broader set of the community. So, you know, this is, again, an area I think that's been very strong over the last 6 years, and this continued Burlington's, you know, progressive policies in this area.
Thank you. Another question from our audience about health and services. This person would like to know what other public health issues the candidates would prioritize beyond addressing the opiate crisis, which I suppose people would think was number one here. We will start with Karina.
You know, I won't talk about the need for safe injection facilities then, but I will talk about the fact that we have this wonderful community health center and all of the assets in our community that are affiliated with the community health center, and we need to maintain that commitment, and we also need to learn from that commitment to make sure that we start to bring services into neighborhoods and communities where they don't exist. In the New North End, we have 11,000 people who live north of the city, and they could use access to more services than they have. You shouldn't have to always come to our downtown core to get services. I think we can be working with Community Health Center and other service providers in our community to bring some of those services to the New North End and to our families in the New North End, including health and dental care.
Thank you. Moreau.
One of our major initiatives is, I think, not often thought of as a public health initiative, but it is, and that is creating a new Burlington Early Learning Initiative. This is something that is in the budget this year for the first time. We have $500,000 that is being used to support our community, our high-quality child care centers, and give them new resources to expand and serve more kids, particularly low-income kids. And why I say this is a public health initiative is that we know the same interventions that are good for education outcomes also have the same positive impact on long-term chronic health outcomes. And that's why we have been succeeded at getting the UVM Medical Center to be at the table in the planning of this new initiative. And my hope and plan is that we will ultimately get them and other entities to put additional resources in and leverage that $500,000 into $1 million, $2 million a year to create a comprehensive new system for early learning in Burlington. I'm very excited. It's one of the things really I'm running again for is because I think this is an area where we can make great progress in the next 3 years.
Thank you. And Infinite.
Whatever a mayor can do to support and promote universal health care in this state is what I would be doing as mayor in terms of public health. We need universal health care. And we have basically a healthcare system that is privatized and is out of reach for most Vermonters. And so when it comes down to it, you know, the way that our healthcare and our health insurance is working out for us right now, I think are leaving a lot of Vermonters, not just Burlington, a lot of Vermonters vulnerable.
Okay, and Karina would like to use her fifth and last rebuttal card.
I know. So, when speaking about childcare as healthcare, I'm not sure exactly if I make that connection, but what I will say on childcare is that a $500,000 grant program instituted in the application process today after 6 years of not having progress on this, I think we do need to focus on childcare, but we need to take a look at the fact that our after-school program is understaffed, and we need to take a look at how we don't have summer programming every day of the year, a quality enriching programming, so that our families can thrive. And we really ought to look at making sure that summer school doesn't have waiting lists. These are things we can do right away without creating a new mayoral initiative. We just need to use the funding to meet the needs of our families.
Okay, thank you. The next question is back to housing, and what would you support as its highest and best use for the redevelopment of Memorial Auditorium? So we will begin with Miro.
Great. Here's another area where what we inherited from past administrations was a real problem. Memorial Auditorium had been underinvested in for years and years. We have been in administration of action on Memorial Auditorium. In 2015, we went to the city council and said we got to spend $250,000 in emergency repairs that are overdue, and we got to get a right long-term plan for the building. What is that right long-term plan? Well, here's what I've committed to. By November, by this fall, if I get to keep leading these issues, we will have a plan in front of the city council and then the voters after a robust public engagement process that restores Memorial Auditorium to what it has been for 90 years, a publicly owned public assembly space that has great 21st century features that have been lacking for too long. And we will not only have the modern amenities that are necessary, we will have what we didn't have in recent decades and that contributed to the decline is we will have an outstanding operating and management plan to keep the building relevant. That's what you'll have before you by the fall if we keep moving forward.
And Infinite Memorial.
So the bricks and mortar part is only one half of how to deal with the Memorial Auditorium. The Memorial Auditorium is a perfect opportunity to engage Burlington residents in a deep process of how they want to use that space. I would prioritize our young people. We had that space for a long time for young people, for a place to meet with each other and activities all year round, and also prioritize a senior population for places to gather. We don't have a commons, and that is why we have what we have at our City Hall Park, and why we have what we have in certain parts of the city, because we don't have a commons, and we do need a commons. Every place needs a commons, and so there is this concept of leading from behind. And this is a project that I would lead from behind and put the young people and our seniors up front to hear from them how they would like the space to be used.
Thank you. And Karina.
So the need for Memorial Auditorium hasn't gone away. You know, for 90 years it has served as a memorial building, and it has served as a civic space and to foster the arts and music scene, and to be a market. And it has a wood floor gym, which there aren't many of them in this city. You know, we need to make sure we preserve affordable, if we can, and that as well. Preserve Memorial Auditorium if we can, and we really need to take the time to understand what the capacity, the limits of that building are. And if we can preserve the authentic, old building, that would be my priority. But I just want to make sure we're not rewriting history. You know, as recently as September, the mayor's office was communicating with the city both that they were not yet ready to have the conversation when the neighborhood planning assemblies wanted to have the conversation about Memorial Auditorium. The All Wards NPA had the meeting anyway, and as well as putting out the communication that there would be a request for proposals to see who would like to do something with this building. You know, this has been part of our highest bidder approach campaign. We need to move away from a highest bidder approach, and we need to be making sure that we're building and leveraging our community assets for the people who live here. You know, since then, the mayor has made the commitment that we will maintain this space. So I just want to clarify that from a historical perspective.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, and we will start with Infinite on this one. For Burlington to meet the needs of the community and improve public infrastructure, we need to generate more revenue. What specific initiatives will your administration support to grow local tax revenue?
One specific initiative would be, and we'll see how soon this moves along, is the taxation of marijuana sales in the city of Burlington. I am a proponent of the legalization, and I think that we also need to leverage that as an opportunity to grow our revenues.
Okay, Karina.
Okay, so as for local tax revenue, I think this is also tied into parking. And I think our parking revenues are exceeding that which we thought they would be. We are well on track to raising an additional $2 million from our parking revenues. I think we need to look at the fact that we're about to go into 3 years of construction in this city, where there's going to be a lot of hassle and a lot of headache. And we need to look at what the parking revenue is doing to the sales tax revenue and the rooms and meals tax revenue. And we need to make sure we're supporting our downtown merchants and businesses through this challenging period of construction by reducing barriers to downtown, encouraging people to come downtown and spend their money and support these businesses, despite some of the dust that's going to be flying and the challenges that we'll see in our community.
Okay, and Moreau.
I would like to point out that the hardworking CEDO staff just made a report at the City Council on Monday, reporting out on a survey of downtown merchants who, during this period of construction, 73% of them reported they had a good or great holiday period. And part of that is because CEDO is working so hard with the downtown merchants to make sure they get supports through this period. We've also just gotten a $65,000 grant that CEDO applied for that will largely go to Resource to make sure that they have job training and work in this period. You know, a lot of how we increase revenues is stuff we've already talked about. It's getting good downtown investment. It's getting additional housing. For example, the property that the mall redevelopment is on will go from generating, it's already one of our highest property taxpayers. It pays about $800,000 in property taxes today. That's going to increase to more than $2.4 million after redevelopment. That kind of growth is what is lacking in the rest of Vermont, and it's why we're having such pain in our education system, is the tax base is actually shrinking in the rest of Vermont. It's not happening in Burlington now, which is a good thing. On infrastructure specifically, though, where the question started, we had big news in the last couple weeks on this that isn't about going to taxpayers. It's going to the entities that don't pay taxes, UVM and Champlain College. They have volunteered to put in $6 million into the infrastructure plan for the first time, a real milestone agreement in terms of how we fund these things in new ways.
Thank you very much. Next question. To combat the prevalence of isolation among older adults, and given that senior centers rely heavily on local funding, share your ideas on maintaining the financial stability of our senior centers. And we'll start with Karina.
Okay, so I was starting to write down answers to the first part of your question. You know, I think it's interesting how we fund our senior centers, and we do have the meals program. In many other states, the meals dollars come in through our senior centers and are really no pun intended, the bread and butter of our senior centers. So I think it is a challenge, and some of our senior centers have managed it well, and others have not weathered it as well. I was involved in the mayor's office when the Champlain Senior Center basically said, "Uncle, we can't do this anymore." And we worked to relocate that into the St. Joe's Old North End Community Center to make sure that they would continue to thrive. I think there are some hiccups along the way in that transition, but having a community commitment to the success of our senior centers is very important. And generally, the success of our seniors, we need to be making sure that people have access to transportation, to services in their communities so that they can continue to thrive. That includes Green Car, which I think I mentioned before, and there is plenty more that we can be doing.
Terrific. Thank you. Mayoral?
I'm sorry, Francis, how do we fund senior centers in new ways?
Yeah, it was to combat isolation, and senior centers are clearly important, and they rely on local funding. So your ideas for maintaining the financial stability of the senior centers?
Yes. Okay. Well, so we have two senior centers in the city, and the Champlain Senior Center in particular was going through difficult times, and so the city stepped up, and we brought that into city government. It's now run by our Parks, Recreation, and Waterfront team. They have leased out the entire second floor at the Old North End Community Center, and that was a key element of allowing that old church property to be converted into the great community center that it has become. And I think that was one innovative example. Another important thing that is happening with seniors is we have the largest seniors development since the Cathedral Square project was built in this community is now happening as part of the Cambrian Rise project. Again, this is another area where this administration has been a very close partner with the housing nonprofits. I personally have lobbied hard in a variety of settings to make sure that we have the resources that we can go forward with this low-income seniors housing at an unprecedented rate.
Right. Infinite.
Yeah. So our seniors are one of our community's greatest resources, and the senior center that you were talking about, I'm in troubling times, and when that shift happened, because that is the NPA that I've been a part of for several years, the seniors had no idea that they were being moved from that the location of that center was being moved. Right. So the first thing we need to do is respect the leadership of our senior population and have them become a part of that decision, because they were very concerned about this abrupt move from where they were to the St. Joseph's Church. And the other point I'd like to make is the point that I brought up earlier, is we have to make it easier for seniors to stay with their families, and when there are these rules that prevent family members from staying with seniors because they're not on a lease, it makes it harder for seniors to have their families with them and a community around them.
Thank you. We're going to go to governance and taxes a little bit more. We started into it a little bit. Both Burlington and Vermont are viewed as high-tax places to live and to own a business. Over the past several years, local tax rates have risen only nominally. Still, tax rates are higher than in comparable cities. In your opinion, are Burlington's taxes too high, too low, just right? As mayor, what would your goals be relative to local taxes? And we will begin with Mayoral.
Well, I appreciate the way the question was framed, Fran, and that a lot of people don't realize that the municipal part of your tax bill has been really kept under control in recent years through a whole number of the strategies we've been talking about, including pension reform, which we haven't talked about, and just good financial management, increasing our credit rating, which has brought down the cost of debt. Through all those reasons, the tax rate on the municipal side is only 0.2% higher today than it was 3 years ago, which I think is a real accomplishment that I would do everything I can to continue. We are, though, taxed too much, particularly property tax too much as a community, and that goes to these statewide issues that we have a problematically broken education system statewide. We need to do something about these structural issues that we are in the rest of the state spending way too much on on schools that serve way too few kids. That's why I've supported Act 46 and other reforms on the statewide level. We need to do that in a way that protects the uniqueness of the Burlington school system, however.
Time is up. Infinite on local taxes.
Yeah. So, as I brought up earlier, I have not seen a tax bill up front because I'm a renter, right? And so what I do know, though, is that there are different components to the taxes, and they are broken up. And I do think that we need to look at them separately and see how and why those different components are growing, and how assessors come to the conclusion that they come to in setting tax rates. And I think we need to move away from the property tax to fund our schools towards a personal income tax to fund our schools, which is a better measure of a household's ability to pay taxes to fund our schools.
Okay. Karina?
And Infinite, while you may not have seen your tax bill, as renters, I think we all know renters pay property taxes as well in the form of their rent. And I think that I agree with you, and I know we're not supposed to talk directly to each other, so let me talk to these people. We need to be moving away from the property tax, and I think this is to fund our schools, and this is the year to do it. Montpelier is ready for the conversation. As we're looking at an 8% increase in our school budget, if we want less than 1% increase in our spending, it's now more evident than ever that there are too many factors that come into play. We don't really get to weigh in. And, you know, I think this is related as well to the fact that our bond rating has been going up in the city due to an accumulation of some of the pilot funds that we have not been sending over to the schools per our city charter, which we can't legally, but if we could only send over $450,000 of the 1.4, we needed to reduce the property tax on the municipal side to make up for what the school district has had to raise to make up for that loss of revenue. We can't be balancing the books of the city on the backs of our schools.
Okay. Another question which is very related. Would you plan to reassess all properties in the cities to a level set of assessments rather than continue what this person calls a hodgepodge method of reassessing that is done today? Infinite?
Yes. Yes. No, I do think it's important that we always, or we should take inventory as often as we can, so that we don't lose track of all the different things going on. And so I do think it's a good idea to take another look at how we assess the properties.
Karina?
So it is important for us to maintain, faith in our city government and have people believe and understand in our statewide or the reassessment process that has to happen when the sales of our homes begin to look quite a bit different than our assessed values. And we do need to do that in a way that is more transparent and maintain our commitment to neutrality when we do that. But it is I've heard a lot from residents throughout the community that they wonder if the house around the corner is being reassessed properly. It needs to happen when it needs to happen, when the property values change, and it's time.
Merle?
So reassessments are triggered by a statutory process. When you fall below essentially 80% of market value, that's by statute you have to do an appraisal, and that's a reappraisal for the whole community. That's very close to happening. It will either start next year or the year after that. I'd like to address, though, another inaccuracy that has been said a lot of times, and it's just not right. We, as a city government, what we have done with putting the city's finances in order has not been done at the expense of the school district. It has helped the school district. It has made the school district stronger. Here's an example of that. By getting our A credit rating back again as a city, we have locked in more than $12.6 million in tax savings for city taxpayers, for school taxpayers, and for ratepayers. 1.7 million of that so far is for school taxpayers, and that translates into more than and that's locked in over the life of the bonds, but it means in next year's budget there will be $100,000 less being spent on interest than would otherwise, and that figure is going to go up every year from here that the schools take on debt, which we know is happening right now at a very high rate. So this is a very important thing we've done to help the schools.
Okay. As mayor, how will resources be, how will you ensure that the city budget is efficient, transparent, and accountable so taxpayers really know how spending occurs? And we'll begin with Karina.
You know, I have served on the Budget Transition Committee. I did that when I helped to elect Mayor Weinberger 6 years ago. And I think, you know, the budget is complicated, and that's a tall order to be able to make sure everyone understands it. So transparency is a tall order, and the City of Burlington residents expect it. You know, as far as how to do that, we have suggested in our campaign that the neighborhood planning assemblies can be part of setting the priorities of the budget. It's one thing to present the budget and ask questions. It's another thing to start the budgeting process by going around in the communities and talking about priorities and looking at what's working and what's not working. And you will then see, you know, a remarkable level of engagement. I think if you give people access to power and access to participate in the planning the budget of their city, they're going to take the time to understand it rather than presenting it to them and give them an opportunity to ask. I think we can bring people in, and with that will come greater understanding.
Moreau.
Well, I think over 6 years we've proven that we can run an efficient budget. That's a big part of why we have had such modest property tax growth on the municipal sides. How have we done that? Well, part of it has been through transparency. Every transaction, every time the city writes a check, pays anybody, that now goes onto our check register that you can see online. Every transaction's on there to be for the public to view. We, as part of that, have had a huge data effort where the performance of every city department is now reported out on a regular basis. You can go to another part of the city website and see the BTV Stat initiative, which is not just a public transparency effort, it's also how we run the city now. We get every department together once a month and we look at the metrics and we push for accountability and we push for improvement and we solve problems together at that table once a month. We have made innovation a new ethic in city government. We created a chief innovation officer. We have an innovation award given to employees every year. And through all these measures, I think the city budget is in a better shape than it has been in a long, long time. We just got a clean bill of health on the audit for the first time in 15 years as one example of that.
Thank you. And Infinite.
Well, last time I checked, our Chief Innovation Officer was also serving as a Chief Accounting Officer and juggling two really big jobs. And she's an amazing woman, but that's a lot of work. So I'm not sure what that workload really looks like. But when you're talking about efficiency, to me, efficiency includes meeting the needs of the most vulnerable people in our community. So if we're not meeting those needs, I don't see that as efficient. And when you talk about transparency, I think we ought to have more eyes on the budget. And so as mayor, I would put forth participatory budgeting as a means of engaging the folks in our community in a meaningful way and deciding how public resources are distributed.
Thank you. Our last question here, and then we will go into your final concluding statements. We have heard a lot about politics and policy tonight, but the mayor also needs to be a good boss to the city employees. How would you describe your managerial style? Moreau.
Great. Oh, sorry. Great that I get a chance to speak to this. Sorry. Although it's been pretty good. Here's an example of how it's been pretty good. There was talk of endorsements earlier. Let's be really clear. There have been 6 labor unions that have made endorsements in this campaign, and 5 of them have endorsed the Mayoral for Mayor campaign, including 3 of the labor unions that work for the city, work with the city, and that help run the city. The Police Officers Association, the Firefighters Association, the electrical workers are all supporting this campaign, and I think that's an example of how it's working. Here's another example. When we have been through one major collective bargaining round on my watch, we took on big issues in that collective bargaining round. We went through healthcare reform, we went through pension reform, much needed pension reform, and what happened in that? Did we have big disputes and big problems? No, we got successfully negotiated agreements with all 4 collective bargaining units. That had not happened for many, many years, if ever. We know how to work with our public employee unions.
And your managerial style.
My
Thank you, Moreau.
managerial style is through integrative consent. And so I don't have, I do actually have folks who I supervise. However, I don't direct people to do, what I want them to do. And actually, I like to match people with their strengths and learn from the folks who are subordinate, because we are all continuing this personal development and professional development, and that is how I intend to govern the city.
Thank you. Karina.
So as a business owner of 10 years, one thing I've learned is that you can have the best laid plans, but if you don't check in with the employees about them first, you're likely to make a mistake. And I'm speaking from personal experience that my managerial style is to start the conversations with the employees about the ideas, about where to bring this city. One of those is employee safety. I think we can probably all agree that the people who know best about how to implement safety for staying safe on the job is the workers who are experiencing the threat to that safety. And we need to empower our city employees with employee-managed safety budgets, in cooperation with management. The AFSCME endorsement was meaningful to me because it is the workers of the city. Everyone from the airport to Parks and Recreation to Public Works to the library to the civilian employees at the police and fire and more. These are the employees who have that make our city work every day, the wage and hour employees represented by AFSCME. I'm proud of that endorsement, and I think it says we're ready for change.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank you all for your really specific answers. I think we learned a lot today from all of you. We actually, the candidates drew for the order of the closing statements as well. And Karina is first, and then Infinite, and then Moreau. So Karina will begin her closing statement.
Thank you for this opportunity tonight. This has been a good conversation. I want to close by saying it's time to pivot to progress for all. As we look to the future for our Queen City, it is time to commit to development of our community, the future of our schools, and to a resilient, energized economy for all of us. We can support the growth of microenterprise and small business to create the dealer.coms and Ben & Jerry's of tomorrow. We can foster the creation of job training programs that connect the people who live here with the opportunities in our growing tech sector and the booming construction trades. We can focus investment on mixed-use development with housing for our seniors, our new Americans, and our working families, and affordable commercial space for our emerging employers. We can seek new tech employers and support our incubator spaces to generate new businesses from within in cooperation with our local colleges and university. We can make building small or tiny possible in Burlington so that our young Burlingtonians too can realize the dream of home ownership. We can again foster the development of community, and we can reject business as usual because it is unacceptable for Burlington to become anywhere else USA. We can offer small community building grants to bring people together, to build networks, create new traditions, events, and programs, and encourage a community that cares for one another. These grants will be the seeds that will grow into the proud accomplishments of our city tomorrow. And we can lead our schools out of crisis. With mayoral leadership, we can recommit to fostering schools that are focused once again on the success of our children. We can have schools where morale is high, and we can move to diversity being our greatest strength and the source of what unites us. Please join our team at karinaformayor.com. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Karina. And Infinite.
Well, one of the most memorable moments I had, adventures I had in this building, when I was a DJ, I threw a huge New Year's Eve party in this building, and it was a hot mess. I'm telling you, we had some casualties, really, but no one got hurt. We didn't lose anybody, and it was really my job to help people have a good time. And my partner and I, with some help from our friends, made that happen. I am a community builder and a community organizer. And the other most memorable time I've had in the space was actually calling you to the carpet, Weinberger, because we felt like the city was not shoring up. and doing right by everyone in the city. So, and we knew then, just like we know now, and what separates me from both candidates is that cities shouldn't just be managed like a business, and sometimes actually cities should be a community to be organized. And I'm convinced that I have what it takes to organize this community in a meaningful way so that people have different relationships with each other and power is shared throughout our community.
Thank you, Moreau.
Great. You know, Infinite, I remember that time in this room, and you have been a powerful community organizer and advocate, and you did get to me that night, and it's one of the reasons that subsequent to that night we adopted a diversity and equity to strategic plan and are very serious about implementing, and I think have made substantial strides on diversity and inclusion issues, including in really important areas like our police department. Thank you again to the hosts for this opportunity tonight. Thank you to, I should have taken the offer earlier to take away that card. Thank you to all the sponsors tonight. Thank you to ECHO for hosting us tonight. This is a great use of this space. We're excited to be partnering with ECHO in the upcoming year to rebuild much of the area around here using one of the last projects from that great Public Investment Action Plan, TIF investment in the waterfront that will be happening this summer. You know, over the course of this campaign, Karina has made it clear that she wants to be remembered as someone who, in her words, really, really took chances. That is how we remember the years under the last progressive mayor, and that is not a time we can afford to go back to. This administration will never speculate with taxpayers' hard-earned dollars. We will continue to make major investments in public goods. We will continue to make our bike path and parks much better. We will continue to properly steward our core infrastructure. We will continue to transform our northern waterfront and downtown into even better places than they are today. We will, in short, continue to deliver on Burlington's legacy of bold action and progress. We will continue to strive to becoming a welcoming city despite a hostile federal government, and we will continue to restore Burlington to its historic place as Vermont's city of opportunity for all people in all backgrounds, incomes, and ages. Let's keep moving forward. I ask for your vote on March 6th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all so much. Yes, let's applaud for these remarkable public servants that really have a commitment to this community. I think all of them do. Many thanks to all of them. Also to AARP, Burlington Business Association, Local Motion, VT Digger, and I know that Teresa Murphy wants to say a few concluding words, so just give us another 1 minute, and I'm sure that Dave will give her the sign as well. Thank you all. Hold on just a second. Where are you? There you are.
Oh my God, they're halfway out the door. I got to bring them back. So if we made it to me in the program, then you know that end is near. I'm Teresa Murray Clausen. I direct VT Digger's underwriting and events programs. For those of you who may not know VT Digger, it's Vermont's only nonprofit online news daily dedicated to public service journalism. We have no paywalls or fees associated with our news, and you can check us out at vtdigger.org. Digger has statewide reach throughout the state, and we also cover Vermont's congressional delegation in Washington, D.C. We have 200,000 unique monthly readers, and 10,000 people read Digger every day. Corey Dawson is Digger's Chittenden County reporter. He's covering tonight's event, so you can read about it tomorrow in Digger. We also have our senior editor, Jim Welch, and our community editor, Mike Doherty. So if you have a hot tip tonight, you can talk to Corey, and if you have a hot tip that needs editing, you can talk to Mike or Jim. So thank you. Thank you. I do not live here, so I cannot vote here, but I learned a tremendous amount. So thank you for the time and for the energy and the effort that you have put into these forums. I attended the February 5th forum and learned just as much there as I did tonight. A lot of work went in to making tonight's free event possible. So if you donate to any or all of our organizations, we thank you because you helped make this happen. If you don't donate to any of us, feel free to talk to any of us. Kelly in the back, Jason, the two Kellys, Burlington Business Association, AARP, Local Motion. We'd also like to thank ECHO, of course, and Sugar Snap, and you're going to learn about Sugar Snap in a minute, and they're very, very important. We'd also really like to thank CCTV, Channel 17, for providing the live stream for this evening. So for those of you who are watching, thank you for participating through live stream. So everybody in this room tonight has a stake in why they are here. For the candidates, it's the opportunity to publicly express their positions and hopefully secure votes. For the sponsoring organizations, it's an opportunity to provide a venue in which the constituents can gather and learn. For you, the attendees, and those watching on the live stream, it's an opportunity to learn firsthand what the three candidates plan for Burlington's future. But hopefully, what we all have in common by being here is that by engaging in this democratic process, executed through constitutionally protected free speech, we strengthen this awesome community of Burlington. But there's one more I, and one more to dot, and one more T to cross if we want to make democracy truly happen in Burlington. If you have not registered to vote, please do so by Wednesday, February 27th. We will soon have same-day voter registration, but not this year. So you must register by February 27th if you have not. You can check in with...
We have same-day registration. Show up at the polls and you can register
awesome.
that day. We had it last year, too. Where are the fact checkers for Digger? My goodness.
I proudly stand corrected. But you know, that just reinforces the importance of it, so thank you.
And we have that in part because Burlington supported it.
Hey, this is... Now, I know I got this one right, Moreau. You have to vote on town meeting day, which is Tuesday, March 6th. However, you can vote early. There are so many opportunities to vote: absentee ballot, early voting, which is usually during the regular City Hall business days, during the regular business day, and of course, town meeting day itself. The polls are usually open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Lastly, dessert. This is it. I don't know if it's constitutionally protected, but it should be if it's not. It is, you can join the candidates and all of us in the rear of the room and also in the lobby, being provided by our great friend Abby and the Sugar Snap team. So thank you for taking the time tonight to engage in the democratic process, and don't forget to vote on Tuesday, March 7th.